Hello, my name is Debbie Ison and I'm a therapist and therapy trainer at Tranquil Awakenings, Lincoln. And I help people in whatever way they need. It may be mentally, emotionally, physically, socially, energetically, or spiritually. And the reason I wanted to come on here today was to discuss with you shadow work and the shadow self. What I mean by this is that we all have lots of parts to us. Parts of us that we like and appreciate. And then there are other parts perhaps that we fear, that we decide not to embrace, and we push them down into our unconscious mind. And this is usually for the fear of rejection, not being welcomed, accepted, or loved by others, and also ourselves. And most of us go about in our day-to-day life not really thinking of these until we become triggered. Now, what I mean by this is we end up having interactions with others, and perhaps through the words that they say or their actions, they make us have an emotional response in some way. We might feel angry, upset, or frustrated, or we might feel judged or judge others, or perhaps we may even become withdrawn and go very inward. This is what I'm referring to when I talk about the shadow self. The parts of us that we have buried. Now, there are lots of advantages through working through those things. And in doing so, it allows you to live a healthier, happier life. It improves your communication with other people. It allows you to know yourself better and fills you with feelings of self-acceptance and love. So you might be thinking, well, that's all well and good. I identify some of those traits within myself. But what is it that I need to do in order to overcome those shadow parts? Now, when we work on the shadow self, that can sometimes be scary because it's facing our inner demons, those limiting beliefs and patterns of behaviour that are no longer serving us. And also it takes time. So when you're ready to embark on this journey of healing yourself, be understanding. Know that it may not happen overnight. It's taking one step at a time. And there are lots of different ways that you can do this. So when you're working on your shadow self, what I always say is the place to start is by being a compassionate witness. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is just as soon as you recognise you've been triggered in some way, just allowing yourself to take a step back as if you're observing the situation, observing your actions, interactions, your thoughts and belief systems. And when you start to do this, it's going to allow you to break it down into smaller, more manageable steps. The compassionate part is also really important. What I mean by that is doing this process without judgment, accepting yourself for where you are now, and also being open and willing to work on yourself, to allow yourself to progress forward and be the best version of yourself that you could possibly be. So when you are working on yourself and you become aware of one of these triggers, I find it's really useful to start breaking it down by asking the question, why? What emotions is it I'm feeling? How am I experiencing those in my body? Why am I feeling this way? Where did this feeling first come from? And through that, you start to build up a construct, an idea of what this is really about. Because quite often these reactions are symptomatic of something deeper that's going on. It may be from childhood or an earlier experience, something that has left us feeling wounded, scared or betrayed. So when you begin to work all of this out, it's a process and it's a journey. And what can be really beneficial as you're going along this journey is to make notes, to perhaps journal, to write down what's going on. Because when you start to take it out of your mind and put it onto paper, once again, it allows you to start viewing it from a different standpoint. And what's also great about journaling is it allows you to look back and focus on not only who you are now, but also how far you've come. Other things that you can do to help yourself are to meditate. Now, different people meditate in different ways. It might simply be taking that time to have a quiet walk by yourself to reflect on what's going on. It may be listening to a meditation online. It may be doing something active or mindful. Through trial and error, you'll work out what is best for you. Another good way you can start to deal with your shadow self when you're being triggered is to talk about it. So it may be that you've got a trusted friend or a colleague that you can go and discuss these things with, to explain what's going on, and by being willing to listen to their perspective, or simply being open, being vulnerable to share what's going on, can really start to shift things. It often helps as well because it takes the dialogue from being an internal thought process to something external. It's a release, it's an expression. It may be that you feel in a position where you're able to talk to the person who you feel has harmed you in some way, who's triggered that response. Now, what I always try to remember in these situations is that person's behaviour is their behaviour. This is my response. It's taking ownership and responsibility for what you can do in that situation and how you can change it to make yourself feel better and to deal with the situation more effectively in future. If you choose to discuss it with the person, it might be an idea for you to have some time away and reflect and perhaps write a list of the points that you want to discuss. Also, in these situations, we often get carried away in our thought processes and we start telling ourselves stories about what's happened, what's going on, what the other person thinks of us. And that may or may not be accurate. So instead of accusing the other person, you've done this to me, you've hurt me, you've said this, instead you can approach it by saying things like, the story that I'm telling myself in my head is this. So it once again puts it back on your thought processes rather than shifting the blame onto them. And that tends to allow for more effective communication. And in up and coming videos, I will share with you more tips for communicating with other people effectively. And also in my videos, I'm going to share with you lots of different therapeutic techniques that you can use to help yourself as you're working through this shadow part of you. These shadow parts, I should say, because there's often many. And that's another really important thing to consider. What steps, what things can I put in place to help myself? And it may be that you use some tapping. It may be that you use some positive affirmations. It may even be that you need to take that extra step and seek help from a professional like me to help you work through it in a very understanding way, without judgment, to get you to where you need to be. So I just want you to remember, going through this process, although at times it may be unfamiliar or scary, it is ultimately going to benefit you. You will feel so much lighter, so much freer, and it will allow you to be the best version of yourself that you can be, which will then also benefit everyone else in your life. And it will mean that you get everything in alignment, whether it's personally or professionally. So, I invite you today to start working on your shadow self. Take it one step at a time. Accept yourself for where you are and enjoy the process of allowing yourself to be the best version of yourself that you can be. I look forward to you joining me in future videos as I carry on sharing different topics and ideas and different therapeutic techniques that can help you. Enjoy the rest of your day and take care. Goodbye for now.